And we're live. So welcome everybody to the first Open RFC call of 2020. My name is Darcy Clark. I'm your lovely host for these calls usually, and appreciate everybody jumping on today. Quickly, for any folks that just joined, awesome. Thanks, Roy, for pinging the notes doc. Feel free to add yourselves as attendees. And Daniel's kindly offered to take notes today. So again, quickly some housekeeping. The intention of this call is, again, to sort of provide a mechanism for us to work closely with the community to overview and look at potential conversations, net new features, bugs, issues that the community wants us to put some focus around. And just another communications channel that we have available here at NPM. These are bi-weekly meetings that we have, and we have a global and public events calendar that you can subscribe to so you don't miss these calls going forward. And we'll be trying to ensure that the agenda gets created in the alternating weeks. So you have about a week of time to see what we've queued up. That is usually automated. Unfortunately, over the holidays, as I noted before we went live, our script sort of died. So this was, the agenda was put together very last minute. So I apologize for that. A bit of extra housekeeping. Again, this is public and live streamed on YouTube, so just be mindful of that. And I think because it is the new year, I wouldn't mind doing a round of introductions and just say who you are, what you do, and who you work for maybe. And I can get started by saying I'm Darcy Clark. I'm the engineering manager for open source and community at NPM. And I work with quite a few of the folks that are on here in one capacity or another. Who'd like to say hi?
My name is Daniel Sabel. I'm a product manager here at NPM, and I work with a lot of the teams at NPM on various things.
Cool. Roy, you want to go?
Sure. My name is Roy. Work with Darcy in the open source community team at NPM.
Cool. Claudia?
My name is Claudia. I work at NPM, and I also work on the open source team.
Nice. Mike?
Hey everybody, my name is Mike. I also work on the open source team here.
And Wes?
Hey everybody, I don't work at NPM, so I work at Netflix, work on tooling and sort of how our package and publish lifecycle works.
Awesome. And Will?
Hi, I'm Will. I also work at Netflix. I work on our internal node.js runtime team.
Awesome. I appreciate the Netflix folks showing up in droves. We'll get more of you, more and more of you.
Yeah, let's try to get other companies more people. Would be helpful
for sure.
too.
For sure, we'll start pinging folks. And again, I apologize for the rough edges as we kick off the new year here. So we're just all getting ramped back up after the holidays. So we're hoping that these calls do get a larger audience as we go forward. And again, a number of the folks that are on this call, I know that we get together in other capacities, in other foundation working group meetings, et cetera. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to connect here in 2020. So to get started, let's jump into the agenda. Before that, anybody have any announcements or want to essentially highlight anything that isn't on the agenda that you want to be or want to move up or prioritize any items?
There was something I was working on. I don't think there's an RFC for it yet. I think I was in the process of making to our conversation at Node Interactive about changing the default NPM package to JSON file to add the modules like flag in. I think I started it, and then it's in some tab in the boards of tabs that I have open at the moment. So I'll get.
yeah, if you can get that created even while we're jumping on this call, then we can add it, and then we'll maybe you can speak to that as well, Michael. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. So that's the npm init adding the like modules to that, essentially that default template.
Yeah, there's already an RFC for it, I think. Yeah.
You have the number?
75? Issue 75?
Okay, so that just wasn't added to the agenda. Okay.
Yeah, I'll add the label to it now.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Do you want to start with that then, Michael, and speak to that?
Sure. So the conversation came up at Node Interactive in December last year, and the update is quite simplistic. I think it's a bit of a misnomer in that it was something that was particularly difficult, but there's a package called npm package init, I believe, in the npm org that carries the default plus the like prompt logic. So I don't particularly think that package has seen well, one, the light of day, and two, any love in quite some time. So it might be worth doing something about that, but I don't know if it has the ability to have like a selective type thing. It's basically like here's the default, enter your answer. It doesn't give you like the choose one of these two things kind of prompt. So we'd have to either add that or figure out how to update that particular thing. But anyways, all of it says that the default template's in there, and you can just update the at the moment, like a first pass could be just like the template type is just common.js, and then you can figure out how to like update the prompts and such later.
Yeah, thanks for the link, Roy. Yeah, I think the only concern is if we don't have an interactive selection option, because I don't know any other subcommand that actually implements interactivity really right now. Init has like flags, so maybe we could do this via a flag for now if we really want to get this in, let's say npm 6, but we're sort of focused at least for now on npm 7 right now, which might mean that we would punt this or backlog this for once we've got that sort of like that beta release out. So I'm just saying that this might be blocked for other work.
But they need
Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. I was just gonna say that there is already the prompts when you're doing an npm init, right? You can just sit there with a default value of let's see what makes more sense now. I don't know what the
well, that's the key. What's the default?
Yeah. No, but I think there's a plan. There is a plan in the.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I think you could have speak for the modules team.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for the modules team, but I will say the problems with type module right now are too complicated to set as the default. Like people will just not understand it and they'll poorly implement, and then the thing won't be consumable by common.js modules. Like that's just unfortunately the fact of the current situation. So I don't think we really have a choice. I'm also fine with that. I'm not trying to say that I want it to be modules. I just mean I don't think it's even really a discussion.
Right.
Yeah. It has to.
I think you're breaking up a bit. I'm not sure if you are for other people,
Yeah,
Michael, but you're artifacting quite heavily. Yeah.
No. Okay.
If you're on a Wi-Fi connection, it's not great. If you're tethering, get closer to the antenna.
Maybe kill your webcam. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. That should be better now. I switched Wi-Fi networks.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay. Great.
Is that better?
Yeah. Sorry, were you saying something, Michael?
I was just saying to Wes's point. I think you're saying like it needs to be defaulted to common JS in order for like the ecosystem to continue functioning correctly with the current implementation of the ES6 or the ESM modules rather.
Yeah, I think that's the same default. And then if you want to opt in to essentially switching that on init, then that makes sense. Okay.
I like the to your point about punting this to npm 7. I like the quick pass of just like adding type equals common JS to the like default and just like kind of having it there without even giving the user a prompt, just to say like you can go into your package.json file and change it afterwards. And then when we get to npm 7, it would be nice to, because then we'll end up pulling this in. It would be nice to give that package some love so we can have, some interactivity with that. Because at the moment there are only two kinds of types, right? Common JS and modules. So it's like to allow the user to just type whatever they want there seems silly.
Also, I think that even when we get better support, I think it's going to be like a tree of questions. So, because you're going to have to say, okay, if it's a module, then is it a dual module? Like, does it have a common JS and a module export? Then if it does, what are the entry points for those different things, right? Because main is no longer going to be a thing. It's going to be the exports, stuff. I think we could balloon that into a really complicated workflow for people, and avoiding that is probably the best decision.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I would like to see this. So this was created as an issue. I'd like to see maybe the actual PR for this so that we can sort of discuss the, and this was kicked off, the scientist by Owen. So we can discuss like the actual implementation of how this might look, to Wes's point, like the different branching decisions that we might want or prompts that we might want to give users on init. We can figure all that out, and then we can sort of ratify that that's the approach we want to take, so that we can then backlog that work. I think we all agree that this is definitely something we want to add to init. So a first pass at what the actual implementation or RFC would look like would be good. So I'm not sure if we want to go back and ask Owen to turn this into a PR, but that would be my recommendation on this. So yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on this defaulting types? No?
I'll take an action item to take the notes that we get from this meeting and add them onto that particular comment.
Awesome.
Or
Thank you.
particular issue, rather.
Thank you, Mike. Awesome. Okay, so moving on. So item number 3, which was Roy's issue number 48 on npm pack list. The feature is to expand the list of default ignored files. I'm not sure if you want to talk to this, Roy, or you want to bring this up. You obviously kicked this off, so.
Sure. Yeah. It's a very, very simple one too. It's just after the work on the file explorer, right? As soon as you navigate a little bit around package on the registry, you see how many files that should not really be published are ending up in every single version of package there. So it's just that I see like the list of default ignored files can be expanded. Like there's some stuff that really shouldn't be in a published package, but it can always be a contentious subject. But I think this one we should at least expand with the things that are really just not disruptive, just things that make sense, like editor config, some other configuration files, usual ones that we always see across JavaScript projects, and we don't want them to end up in the registry.
Yeah, I'd like to see if we could get some more eyeballs on this to like make a more fully fleshed out list, and then just poll to ensure that those are indeed what the community is okay with us ignoring. We also are going to have a very long sort of beta stage for npm 7, so people could say, I went and I did npm pack and I noticed that like you ignored X, Y, and Z, and I wasn't expecting that, or things like that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yeah, we definitely should do it before, well, in time for NPM.
well, it's a
7.
break-in, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the only thing really. But yeah, I definitely hope the community can jump in and help us decide on whether what really makes sense or not.
I've seen some user land implementations of this before, but maybe this would be something also for you all to look into, is analyzing which packages will be affected by these changes. If you even just publicize the list, or even better yet, automated opening up an issue on there and just saying, hey, we're making some changes in NPM 7. You're probably going to be affected by them because your packages currently contain a editor config file. If you don't mean that to be published, close the issue, ignore. If you do, please join the discussion here, or something like that would, I think, be really a helpful outreach way to preemptively fix the issues. Because let's be honest, you're right. Most people probably didn't mean to commit them. So they'll probably all be like, oh, oops, I didn't know I did that. Thank you so much. But the one person who's using NPM to manage their editor configs, well, I say one person, but I'm sure somebody else is doing it out there. It'd be nice to preemptively warn them.
Yeah, just change the file name in a post install script. So, I mean, that's one workaround, but I'm not promoting that as a thing to do. Go ahead. Will.
Yeah, I was gonna say, along that same train of thought, I'd be interested in seeing some analytics registry side of what impact these changes will actually have on module sizes. Because looking at these files locally, they tend to be the smallest part of my projects, and maybe some analytics across what directories are common across different modules that contribute to package bloat, and maybe using that to prioritize what we go after.
Yeah, for me, I'm looking through the why here. And I think the why should not necessarily be focused on sizing. It should be more on the case that Wes is identified. It's I did not mean to do package this up. I did not mean to distribute this. More just the error case where you're not aware of a lot of these dot files, or you're not seeing them based on the fact that they're hidden by default maybe for you. And they get included, and it's so the focus again should probably not be file size, because as you say, they are a lot of the time super small. So it's not that we're bloating packages. It's more so that we just don't want people checking in things that they didn't mean to. So I really like, Wes, what you noted, and I hope we do have a note about it, about being proactive about notifying users about some of these changes. If we do intend to switch how we are packing and publishing packages. So I think we're going to be extremely mindful of that going forward. So, and again, as you say, we could potentially do some initial scraping to see who's got some of this, and potentially if you're logged in, we could potentially give you a little preemptive alert or notification on your package page or something like that, where we say you might be, we notice you have X, Y, and Z files as of NPM 7. We're looking to actually, did you mean to do this? Please go to this RFC and give us comment or feedback or something like that. I think there's a bunch of ways we could potentially ensure that, we communicate this really well. Because we don't want, as you say, somebody who is using NPM to distribute, let's say, config, their editor config or something else like that. For whatever reason they're doing it through a package, then we don't want to disrupt that. So go ahead, Mike, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's interesting. I don't know if the NPM packlist is the right place for it, but on the thought of accidentally publishing something you didn't mean to, there's a case to be made for untracked changes in your directory. I've published packages where I've switched branches, and I've had things that were untracked, and they just got published because NPM packages everything that's in the current working directory. So I've shipped features that I didn't, they were just broken because I accidentally switched branches and it wasn't clean. That should be there should probably be some guardrails around that. I don't know if packlist is the right place for that, but yeah, anyways, it was on that thought of accidentally publishing something. I remember that.
Go ahead, Will.
All of our internal like serverless platform tooling that we've been working on with my team actually goes through and does that check and requires the Git working directory be clean before we allow a publish with an explicit force flag to overwrite that.
Yeah, that
It
should
seems very-
definitely be. Yeah, it seems like a sane default to be checking for like a dirty state. So if you wouldn't mind, Mike, taking the Aon, creating a separate RFC for that, and or opening an issue against, I don't know where the right repo would be for that, but if you want, you can just make an RFC for changing that or adding that capability.
This one's probably going to be contentious.
Yeah, it potentially will. So that's why we'll have discussions once you queue up a RFC for it, or an RRFC if you'd like, a request for an RFC.
But that kind of changing behaviors also would need to go into 7, right?
Yeah, I think though what we're trying to do there is include as many sane defaults that help, like really help to change the ecosystem for the better, right? In 7, and this is like the next time we would have a breaking change would potentially be, you know, like 12 months out. My expectation would be like the earliest that we would have like a breaking change, unless there was something major we really wanted to include in like an NPM. So making decisions like this, like as early as possible in this year, and then getting community feedback is important.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This one in particular, I think it goes along well with the other. Someone had hinted out last time also the idea of just changing the publish behavior so that we take more advantage of like just basically having the user go through a dry run, kind of. So maybe having a prompt, like remember that this idea has kind of been vented out already before, and I think it goes well with that idea of like, let's have a confirmation step before actually publishing, because some people actually like, because when you enable OTP, you kind of have that confirmation time before actually publishing your package to the registry. So that kind of changing behavior might be a good thing to go in 7 and maybe bundle all these ideas together and kind of have a rework around publish altogether.
Yeah,
Okay.
that conversation came up internally about having publishes always be gated with a like yes, no. Are you sure you want to do this?
Yes. I do not think that we put anything together that was substantial. But, okay. So you're okay with taking that on though, Mike? Something, even a first pass at what that would look like?
Gated publish?
Yeah, which might include
Sure.
as like a part of that is, let's say, recommendation also is like no dirty state, like for a Git, like, right? Like a Git branch.
I would really like to see this implemented as a optional feature you can turn on, not a default to start. You're going to break a ton of CI. I bet you any money you're going to break a ton of people's CI's implementation if you turn this on by default.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's why I say I think it's going to be really contentious.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Wes.
Yeah,
I know that userland obviously has a number of tools that essentially are for doing like some of this work to ensure that like, so it's like, do we want to pull in some of the good ideas from the userland, like the existing tooling that we know that package maintainers are using? Like, do we want to pull in some of that like those concepts? And to your point, like, we could potentially put this behind a flag, opt in, opt out of some of this like auditing or like, this gating functionality we could potentially put behind flags if we want, if we think that there's going to be too much disruption, like if we do it by default. So we got options.
Yes, I was just going to mention that point.
Yep.
Right. the idea that it's like a breaking change in V7 kind of thing. It's like that's the opportunity to do that one, I think.
Cool.
I also agree that this is like a very frictional change.
Yeah, if we put it behind a flag, it would not then be, and we don't do it by default.
Yeah, it
right?
wouldn't be as impactful though, right? If we put it
Right.
behind a flag.
So this is the balance we'll have to strike here for sure. Okay.
Behind a flag for a while is a better idea anyway, and then changing the default in a major. Like in general, all of the things that NPM or anything has done in a breaking version that were controversial in my experience are always things that are sudden breaking changes, as opposed like that there's no workaround for in the previous version. Whereas
So
if it's a flag, then if I want to guarantee that I don't break when the next major comes out, I set the flag to the current default explicitly, and then there's no break.
so you'd recommend the way that Node rolls out?
I mean, I don't know
Flagging,
about
yeah.
Node specifically, but in general, yeah. Like for every package I maintain, I always try to ship a Semver minor thing, and then change the default. I never add a new feature in a major. I only change the default of a flag, so that if somebody doesn't like the break, they're not stranded on the previous major. They can still upgrade to the latest major, which is what we all want to encourage. But the simplest tiny workaround, which they can do even before they upgrade, is just explicitly set the setting so that the default won't break on you.
Yeah, I feel like we
That
need
makes sense.
to codify that, or we should for
That would be
sure.
great.
Yeah, I think that is actually things like that. I actually would really like to have us document somewhere to say that this is the practice.
You pack more stuff into, in this case, like you could pack more stuff into V6, like making the V7 change less breaking and easier to adapt to, which gets more people onto V7, you know, or 7 to 8, like whatever, you know. But like highly, like capriciously breaking changes just because, oh, we can do it in a major, are usually the reasons I've found people don't upgrade.
Right.
Which is generally, like, even though I'm an aggressive back compat supporter or advocate, like I still want everyone to upgrade as aggressively as they can.
For sure.
Well, this is actually a back compat thing, right? Because you're basically saying it's in the current version. There is a backward compatibility story. So yeah, it's good.
Right.
I agree.
And if you want to remove the flag in a future major, cool, right? But like then at least you've given a smooth migration path along the way.
Yeah, I like it. And also, I know that at least historically we've been pretty, I think we've treated like majors pretty like as sort of these holy grail type things. But like I remember back in the day, you know, we have to be a bit more aggressive, I think, with being okay that we're eventually going to hit NPM like 29, 30, 40, you know. Hopefully we're going to continue to build off these things. So cool. And I think that would also offload the stress that we're feeling right now with some of the breaking changes that we'd like to make with NPM 7. So is to have a more, yeah, like a flag first approach is good. So okay, cool. Let's move on then. And we got a couple action items from there, I think, Daniel. One also would be ideally codifying that, like how we roll out a feature should be openly. Everybody should see like how we are rolling out like a major feature. Should be out in the open. So that process. So item number 4, which is issue or PR 77. So this was opened by my friend Wes Boss. He would like to quiet down or silence non-errors in npm install. I don't think was able to jump on this call. I did have a bit of a back and forth with him about this, and Isaac unfortunately isn't on the call to talk to this. And I think there was a bit of a miscommunication or a misunderstanding around our output versus PMPM or even Yarn's output in these scenarios, because after asking him to do a bit of research, he was finding the exact same type of log output was being generated in the other package managers. So Yeah, there are ways to obviously like silence and not have a ton of output, but I think the viewpoint here and the frame of reference here is that this can be a bit scary for less seniored developers to see this much sort of output. But I think we have to strike a balance between that and also informing people about the state of the modules that they're and their environment that they're trying to install into. So yeah, I'm not sure if anybody has any thoughts on this.
I agree with this.
Wes, I noticed you actually spoke up about this as well. So
I did, and so I like the focus on new user experience. I think that's very important. A experienced user can always turn a flag that just turns it on and gets the output they want because they need it. The new user won't know about said flag, so it's a lot better to protect them more, I think, from a as a just design standpoint. That said, the screenshots he's posting, there's gonna be weird output from all sorts of things, right? It's not just your output you're controlling too. It's all the modules you install that decide to do post-install logging. And so this kind of choice affects all of them, and that's what I think makes it hard. So I think there will be a balance to strike, and I don't think this particular thread really finds the balance. So that's my input.
Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts on this?
So I wonder, if you could end the log output with just a simple "this worked" or "this didn't work," and still keep the verbosity, but then have a final "this is the outcome of everything above" as a baby step in the direction towards making it friendlier to newer users.
Yeah, so I think to that point, Daniel, I think you're right. To some extent, the output at the end of an install isn't very isn't very successful, ta-da, we should have emojis and party emojis that things were successful. We also don't necessarily know though whether or not something did error out. So that it's kind of, we don't want to give a false sense of security there either. So that's why I think some of the messaging is very specific in post install, packages added versus successfully installed, and giving you check marks or something. I don't know.
I think you hit on the key point though. You don't know. You're doing a bunch of work for other people, right? You're not and even those people, oftentimes they're not exiting non-zero. Even though they failed, I've seen a ton of tools where they have a post-install thing that is executing something, and that thing is failing, but it's still exiting zero. So it seems to me to err on the side of accuracy over that, unless you can, again, find the really good balance, right? And I think the ecosystem today, it's going to be pretty tough to find that balance. It'd actually be much worse to output "it all worked" at the end with a nice green check mark, and it didn't actually work for those new users, than to output a ton of logs that they have to read through. Right?
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure what the action items then for this specific PR are. In fact, this didn't really even, I mean, this doesn't really have necessarily a actionable
looks like a first pass at thoughts.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah. So what we could do is turn this into an issue or some sort of comment versus it as a PR for something that we're actually, it's not very fully fleshed out, in terms of the what and how. How do you want us to quiet log? What do you want us not to show?
Yeah, I think the evolution of this RFC will be the one that Wes mentioned there with the background behavior kind of thing. it needs to be discussed, right? I don't know if that's what we're gonna end up wanting to do, but I think that's the evolution of these RFC right here.
To some extent, we are kicking off this work in terms of consolidating our logging, which I know actually Claudia is working on right now. So having like a single channel and then potentially hiding or essentially.
It sounds like the action item is to like poke at Wes and get him his. It's a shame he's not on this call. Perhaps he can watch the recording afterwards and get a bit of a takeaway and then come back to this. But I think this is gonna. You should just leave the agenda item on here, and we should circle back to this in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Also, they list Yarn and PNPM as prior art, so I'm curious what aspects of those tools they feel solve this in a more elegant way.
That was before before I asked him to provide examples. And
okay.
So that is not accurate. He noted that it's even worse in those package managers. So.
Maybe if you're going to continue in that thread, you might want to either edit his comments or make it clear that that's not the case, because a outsider will definitely come in that and be like crapping on NPM, like, because that's just what people do.
That's okay. well,
it's not okay when it's a false. I mean,
it is a false. You're right.
So,
that's not true. So, okay. Yeah, well, so a couple of things we'll take away there. We'll leave it on the agenda, and I'll try to tap Wes to actually join, because he has great insights, obviously, to that entire community, as you said, Wes. Like he really understands, those people are just getting ramped up, and it's a good lens for us to keep in mind as we build features going forward. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 5, just being mindful of time, we have about 20 minutes left. So RFC, signed documents, and I'm really happy that Will is here. Did you want to maybe just cue this up for folks that may not know, the idea behind this RFC?
Yeah, so I've been working on registry mirrors for a while now. Like internal companies use these to reduce the amount of load they provide to or send to NPM's direction. Places that have bandwidth constraints, like some conferences that are out in the middle of nowhere, will stand up their own NPM mirrors so that folks can actually NPM install at the conference. I think there's an elephant in the room when we talk about these systems and stand them up, which is that you have no way of guaranteeing that the content you're pulling from that mirror actually is what NPM has, or whether or not somebody's modified those documents. Likewise, in an internal company, you might want to validate that you're using, or at a company, you might want to validate that you're using your internal registry and that your developers aren't accidentally pulling from the public registry, especially if there's a risk of naming collisions because you haven't been scoping your packages correctly. So this is just a way of adding an extra signature generated by the registry that you're saying you trust to the documents, and whether we turn that over an HTTP status code or a separate file on the HTTP request, allowing you to validate that what you received over the wire came from the people you expected to deliver it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm actually like 2 thumbs up on this. So when you first brought it up, it made a lot of sense to me. Appreciate, like, I haven't had time, unfortunately, over the holidays to sort of look over the first pass here, the RFC. But I think this is definitely something that we should look at. The actual implementation of this will probably not be the team you see here on this call for us at NPM, but it would be folks internally in other parts of the engineering org. So we would have to backlog that work if we do approve that. But I definitely think that this does unlock some capabilities, and I'm totally down on the fact that it's it provides that level of like safety, security, understanding, like that this is what you expected. You have the right thing.
Just to be clear, there is a CLI component that I think would be, so the CLI component would be actually validating those, right? And then also, so then if you did that, you could actually do that decoupled from NPM's registry providing the signatures, and then other implementations could start providing the signatures, right? So you'd look at, so if you look at the RFC, There's 2 new npm RC fields, Pachyment signature key. And basically, I think if you like looked for the existence of those, you could then turn on validating said keys, right? So in that case, you would be able to, you'd not set that by default for most people, but then if you built it into the CLI, then people like, you know, Will was referencing, like our teams could start providing those signatures on our own without, you know, the public registry necessarily having them. So just want to point out that decoupled.
Sorry, just because I haven't had a chance to really review the RFC, but do you define like a CLI like validate for validate? Yeah, okay.
So I define how this tooling would approach this, and it's entirely through npm RC. I would be interested in doing an example or implementation against like registry static. I think where the biggest risk is a lot of existing mirroring solutions. Like I remember there was a node conference I went to that was out in the middle of nowhere, and we used registry static to set up a simple mirror on site. The thing with those is they're all simple file system based mirrors that you throw Nginx there. So if you're doing things with signing with headers and stuff, you have to assume that your web server is capable of generating those headers, and they're not always capable of doing that. So finding something that works with these super simple mirroring solutions, I think, is important. So while yes, I agree, I don't think I think there is value outside of the actual registry hosting this or providing this feature. I think the values are very diminished if npm proper doesn't support this in the registry. But I think if we don't also put thoughtfulness into supporting those simple mirroring solutions at the same time and land those side by side and validate it's going to work for other use cases, I think we will have done the community a disservice, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Sorry, I'll get off the soapbox.
No, it does make a lot of sense, yeah. Okay. I see also like a secondary, considering some other validating environments and config recently in the community, there's been some sentiment about like validating lock files, etc. And I've been considering whether that should be thrown into like npm doctor as an extra check. This would be something similar as well. I could imagine we'll add also like an extra check if you're providing that that signature, then we could do that separately, but also obviously we would validate along when you go to actually install. So yeah, I see.
I think there's a thing I missed here in the trade-off for, there's the external tooling solution, which I proposed. And I think there's a trade-off I missed there, which is if we do this as external tooling, it requires the npm installation to happen first, which means all of your post-install scripts and everything have already executed. So if you pulled a
which you've already, yeah, you've already right. Like, yeah.
You've been owned, so.
Yeah, exactly. That is, yeah. No, this has to be done, yeah, beforehand. Like the validation would have to, reading through it now, kind of like quickly, or skimming that quickly. Like the doctor idea that I propose is like secondary. It's kind of like yeah, it's, okay, cool.
That particular concern is near and dear to my heart, because I think that is that is one thing I'm working on right now, is figuring out how we're going to prevent people from installing, you know, before they actually run the scripts. And currently that's a little bit difficult. So I definitely, whatever solution we come up with here needs to preempt the install.
Yeah, I want to be mindful of time, but I also want to top up on this just to let folks know that haven't been privy to like all of our internal discussions, but definitely communicating and providing more clarity about where you got something is definitely on our radar, especially when it comes to something like our references to like the tarballs that, you know, we say we downloaded from, like in a package lock. If you change the registry in npm RC, or you change the config or whatever for the registry, that is not necessarily like accurate. So you can essentially go and fetch like something like a package from a different source, and that's, you know, we're considering ways in which we could potentially remove the registry like domain from those like paths, so that the source of truth is always going to be whatever you've defined as the registry, like your registry URL. So yeah, just to just to like essentially top up, we're considering like how we handle that in npm 7 now, and whether or not we put essentially like a placeholder instead of like the registry URL. So cool, but it's definitely something we're mindful of. It's like we want to make sure it's clear where you've gotten something from, and it'd be great if we can also like let you know that we ensured that it was, you pulled down what you thought you were pulling down. So this is, like I said, this is something I want to implement for sure. So cool. So I'm not sure action items here is probably just to get more folks to look at this, and then if we agree with the approach, we can essentially ratify it and then backlog the work. And then we can also consider like coordinating, as you were saying, Will, like coordinating with a use case or example with, as you say, like a mirror implementation. Because again, like as you said, like it doesn't make sense if we say we've implemented this, but like there's no like use case built against it yet. Like it'd be great to like launch with showing how this works.
I have just a quick question before we move on past this. I'm curious. One of the use cases you referenced, I don't think I understand enough about this, which is why I have this question. But so tell me if I'm really off base. But if you are in a situation where you didn't have the best network, and so you created a static mirrored registry, and you want to do the validations, it would still potentially be another network request, right? And so if you're installing something that's like 1,000 packages, does that negate, like, does it become moot then that it's a static registry because you're still making 1,000 requests anyways? You're just not downloading 1,000 tarballs, but you're still making the requests for the like key to do the validation. I'm just curious. I'm curious about like overhead that this adds to the npm CLI. Not that I don't think we should do it, because this is definitely a really important thing that File Explorer enlightened the number of garbage that's in the registry at the moment. And so like the idea that we should be able to validate things is really, 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 really important. But I worry about like people would complain that npm's not fast, or like the CLI is not fast enough. And so with npm 7, we're making installs quite a bit faster with Arborist. And so I don't want to negate all that work we just did by adding this particular thing, or like adding some crazy like CPU usage for the validation of the security keys or something like this to the top of things. But anyways, I'm just curious. So
in the proposal we lead with, essentially originally there was a flag to control this, but it was kind of moot. So essentially the proposal is you check to see if that signature header is there. If you request package signatures be validated, if that header isn't there, you then follow up with a request for the file itself. The way these network things usually work is you'll have one person show up at the conference before everybody else, and they have like a dedicated network connection that doesn't have like 600 attendees trying to use it, and they'll set up their mirror beforehand, or they'll show up with their mirror pre-configured, and then that will have all of those files already on there. So all the network, all the requests are local, and you're not dealing with 600 attendees trying to use one uplink.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool.
Thanks for that. Okay, so moving on probably to the last item we'll get to, being mindful. Did anybody want to actually move something up, considering that we only have about 10 minutes left, or about 8 minutes at this point? If not, I'll just keep moving on to item 6. So this looks like it's just a fix. Files list should not exclude bundled dependencies. So this is number 46 in npm pack list. It looks like this needs to be rebased. And this looks also like it is just essentially a fix. So I'm not sure if we should remove this from the agenda. I think I added it on.
This is the maintainer of Larna, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So npm 6 behavior, both files and bundled dependencies are configured in root manifest. Have you looked through this, Mike? I know that we backlogged it originally, like last month.
No, just doing a context switch in my head. I think
like I'm essentially reading through code at this point. So I think,
Yeah, I think
we'll have to punt. Yeah, we'll have to punt this because I think it's going to change.
So yeah,
that's why
so
it's
so
queued
this
up
is,
for
I'm not sure
NPM
how
stuff.
we're not getting hit by this in the CLI, or maybe we have something set up differently. So like when you add some basic, like the bundle dependencies is stuff that you're vendoring, right? And so if you have a bunch of stuff in your node modules vendored and it's in the bundle dependencies, the files list is also excluding it. Like, I guess if you put this, the use case is like if you have node modules in your files list.
Right. So it's like what
Or
comes
not in the
first,
files
like
list?
what gets ignored first.
Yeah, I feel like there's a use case in Arborist that already fixes this.
Well,
Oh, this is for
support
publishing though, right?
workspaces.
Yeah, to support workspace. Yeah, so I think that this will be handled in the future. I think like there's some combination of work in Arborist. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think that we can punt this. Or yeah, essentially I'll follow up on this actually, and just make sure that it will be actually solved in NPM 7. Because I know I remember talking about this with Isaac at some point as well.
I was gonna say, yeah, it would be good to sort of just like throw this at him, because him being like eyeball deep in Arborist like tree logic at the moment, I think will be he'll have an answer to this in like 10 seconds. So I think.
Well, we do have a item also backlog for NPM 7 is to fix up files and like NPM ignore, essentially like making that cleaner. And to some extent, like he has already done work for that against that. So
yeah. I just don't know in Arborist if he's taken this to in like this specific use case into account.
Yeah. Well, we might have to add that like capability.
Yeah.
Okay. 4 minutes left. Might be able to get through one more thing. Actually, because we have Jordan, do you want to jump to item 11? I know you had opened up a PR for multiple funding sources, and because we have you on, did you want to?
Yeah.
Has there been any movement on this?
Yeah. So the RFC PR, like I haven't pushed on it because I don't have an implementation ready, but it feels like that can just be landed based on our discussion in the last RFC I was in.
Okay.
RFC call I was in.
Yeah.
That's obviously you guys' you folks call. But then I've begun work on an implementation PR that Roy's been helping me with, and we've got another block of time scheduled for tomorrow. So hopefully we can make that work. So yeah, I mean, it seems like it's just a trick of unwinding the like how the JSON and pretty printed format's going to work, and like how we collapse things, and there's like a judgment call. So like if I have 50 packages that each have the same GitHub sponsors URL, but a different Tidelift URL, which is a very likely use case for me, then does that show up as 50 packages with 51 URLs listed? Or does that show up as like one entry with 50 packages and 51 URLs? Or does that show up as 50 entries one entry with 50 packages and the GitHub sponsors URL, and then 50 entries each with one Tidelift URL? It's pretty much either one of those. Otherwise, it's weird, and I don't know which one's better. But I have an intuition that Roy and I have been talking about.
Is there any opportunity to utilize? Could we not take advantage of the type now at this point? So if we saw that it was Tidelift, then could we potentially be utilizing that to determine how we want to present the output?
I mean,
would that help?
In general, I feel like the type is actually kind of useless. Is that it's
for now, yeah.
For now, yeah. I mean, like it's metadata that could be useful in the future, so I'm not saying it should be removed, but more like a URL is either going to be specific to a package or specific to a person or specific to an organization, which is kind of the same as specific to a person. So it's either like one package or broadly. And that's really the only bit that matters here, because if it's specific to the package, it should only show up under that package's name. But in my opinion, but if it is not specific to a package, then it should be deduped. And the likelihood is that, based on the current design of funding, is that the uniqueness of the URL will give you that information, in that my GitHub sponsors URL is the same for every package. However, I've noticed at least one user, I think Cinder does this, where you can put the repo URL with !sponsor equals 1, and that pops up the specific packages repo with a sponsor pop-up. So by him doing that, his 1,000 packages will never be deduped because instead of, and that's his choice, I suppose. He would rather flood the list with vertical entries than have one massive, like, look how many packages I make that you depend on. I prefer actually the other way, but like,
Well, the benefit of his approach is that when he adds a new contributor on a project, all he has to do is add them to the GitHub file, and then they suddenly are listed, but they're not listed explicitly, but when you click the link, you will see them, right?
Totally true. And the like multiple funding sources would mean that you just add a contributor's sponsor link to the funding array, but then that would show 2 URLs. And so it's sort of a difference of whether you want to redirect users to a web page that shows multiple options, or whether you want to show them on the command line multiple people that they can then go sponsor individually. And it's fine for an author, I think, to be able to make that choice, but like that's a choice being made there.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to make sure that we don't exclude that choice, because I think there's validity to the workflow where they don't have to add it in multiple places,
Yeah, well, and I imagine that sometime in the future, all of my funding fields will be replaced with a single like URL that points me to an npm.js.com page that then lists all the various information of all the contributors and so on. But like, we want it to be extensible beyond that.
Well, I think we're at time, so I just want to, though I like where this conversation is going.
Yeah, so I mean, in summary, I hope the RFC can just be merged, but I don't care if it's merged yet or not. It's just like leaving it open saves me more time to build the implementation.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be great, because then
next week.
Yeah.
Or 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, I think by that point, hopefully you and Roy will have time to do that.
Yeah, let's see the outcome of tomorrow's conversation. Then we can update the RFC appropriately.
Sounds great.
Good. Well, I appreciate everybody's time today. Apologize we weren't able to get through everything, but thank you for joining us for the first Open RFC call of 2020, and I hope we see all your faces in 2 weeks. Cool. Cheers.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.